Recording. All right, everybody. This is the second time I'm recording this video because I just recorded it like 2 minutes ago, but I forgot to have my microphone on. So we're gonna try again. Okay. So for this quick video, hopefully it won't be more than 10 minutes. I'm going to look at Spectronaut 17, some differences between the different ways to search direct DIA and library searches. And we're going to look at some of the 300 samples per day method, which is about 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. So this one, what we did was we loaded 200 nanograms of HeLa on our EvoSep LC, and we analyzed it by DIA passive, just a simple DIA passive one that we use all the time. And so this is 200 nanograms of HeLa, 3 minutes. Let's look at the data. Okay. So I searched it a couple different ways. I think 5 different ways. The first one will be what Spectronaut 17 is calling direct DIA plus. I haven't watched the videos yet, so I don't know what the difference is between direct DIA plus and old direct DIA. But this is direct DIA deep. And so let's look at the number of peptides and the number of proteins we get. Okay. So number of proteins and protein groups, around 1,700 to 1,800, depending on if you want to use protein groups for the proteins. It's probably worth a video to talk about the difference. Just long story short, this depends more probably on your database than anything else. Okay, so around 1,700 to 1,800. Let's look at the tick, and so you could see the gradient. Or not the gradient, but look at the tick. You could see it's about a little over about 3.5 minutes long. I think the cycle time's around 4 minutes, whatever 24 hours divided by 300 is. Peptides start to come out around half a minute, and then it stops around 3 minutes. Doesn't look like all the peptides are fully eluted, but at least we hope they're consistent. Okay, so we look at the identifications again. We're getting around 8,800 precursors, 8,000 peptides, around 1,800 to 1,600 protein groups. Not bad for 3 minutes. Let's look at the normalization. They're all pretty much the same, which is good. We can look at the data points per peak. We're getting a median of 7. Like we've seen in my other videos, these curves, the shape of these curves, I believe, is probably like reading tea leaves, and that probably means something, the shape of the curve. So because the curve's not exactly Gaussian, that probably means our peak shapes aren't consistent across the gradient, which is not surprising. Okay, so let's look at some of the data for this. I like to look at the grid view. What I've done was I have sorted by number of peptides. Again, if you don't see the number of peptides column, you could do the secret right click and choose column chooser and then drag whatever column you want. One will be the number of peptides. So I've just kind of sorted by the number of peptides to quasi put the most abundant proteins at the top. And so the most abundant one, according to the number of peptides, is filamin. We could also sort by log2 intensity too. That might be actually a better measure of what are the most abundant proteins, and you could see actins on the top, and that makes sense. All right, so we can look at actin, pretty consistent across all the runs. We're getting a very good coverage. We can look at some of this data to look at the peaks. These look pretty good. These are pretty abundant though, huh? So we can look at some pretty nice looking peaks here. And you could see this is the peptide monoisotopic mass as it comes off. This would be the monoisotopic plus the isotopes. And here are the fragments, fragmentation ions. You can see how they colute and accurately predicted retention time, ion mobility. And so here's the fragments. They smush these all together, and that's how we do the quantitation. We could just pick some other random peptides. That looks pretty good. Maybe not a lot of scans across the peak there, but it's okay. That looks pretty good. These are all actins, so these are going to be pretty intense. You could see I would like to get more scans across the peak here, but I think during the beginning of the run, the peaks look very, very narrow. So that might be pretty hard with 3-minute run time. We could randomly look at some other peaks too. These look pretty good. Yeah, it's not too bad. I'd like more scans across the peak, but these are the beginning of the run, so that's okay. All right, but let's look at some other things. Our coefficient of variation, around 13.5%. That's not bad for a 3-minute run. Let's see, ranked protein groups. This is our dynamic range we're getting on the 3-minute run. Looks like around 4. So 4 orders of magnitude. This would be the most abundant protein, which would be actin, sort of. They're not IVAC values, but it would be nice if they had a little button here that say show IVAC, and then it would show the IVAC, and that would be a little more accurate maybe than just doing it this way, because that's basically this normalized by the molecular weight or the number of amino acids for peptide, depending on how you calculate IVAC. And this would be, or the number of tryptic peptides, right, between a certain number. So anyway, this is the least abundant one. I don't know why it's blinking like that, but it's some kind of calcium channel. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Look at the number of IDs. So around 8,000 peptides. That's probably a more consistent number to look through when we look at the other runs. And about 1,600 protein groups. Okay, so let's compare this with the direct EIA fast method. I actually don't know how much faster this is because I did this all in pipeline. That's kind of their queue. I did it all overnight, but I can look at the logs and figure it out. Okay, so this is about 8,000 peptides between let's just look at protein groups. 8,000 peptides and 1,700 protein groups. So not bad for 3 minutes. If we do the direct EIA fast method instead of deep, I assume it's faster. We drop by around 2,000 peptides, a little under 2,000 maybe, and to around 1,300 protein groups. So it drops from 1,600 to 1,300. So I don't know, what's that, 10%, 20% maybe? Yeah, maybe 300, that's by about 300. Okay, so maybe a 20% improvement with the direct EIA deep versus the plus. We can also, I searched it using the direct EIA method, which I assume is the one in Spectronaut 15. We're getting around 1,400 protein groups, 6,000 peptides, which seems pretty similar to this. Still less than the deep, which makes sense because it's named deep. Okay, so I also searched these with 2 HeLa libraries I had in the lab. The first one I got from Pride, a Pride archive. This was, I forgot who did the paper, but it was a thermo Q-exactive HF paper where they did identify 10,000 HeLa proteins. It's probably very long runs. I don't remember off the top of my head. So I downloaded the data, made the library, and then I exported it and re-imported it into 16, which will give you, which is a trick for you to make ion mobility values from thermo data. So you can actually import thermo data in the Spectronaut, and then if you export it and re-import it, or if you just re-import it in the 16 or 17, or import it in the 16 or 17, it will make the ion mobility values for you. So that's useful for mass spectrometers with ion mobility, like the timsTOF or Waters, I think. Maybe Agilent has it too, I don't know. Okay, so let's look at the peptides. So around 8,000 peptides. That would be similar to the direct EIA plus, so that's not bad, not bad. Where did it go? Let's see, lower panel. Where did my analysis summary disappear? Why did it disappear? I don't know. Let's see, analysis summary. Let's try to get it back. Okay, there we go. So 8,000 peptides, 1,700 protein groups. And you can see the proteins have increased to 4,000. That has more to do with the library than the actual sensitivity of the analysis, I would say. Maybe. Since the protein groups are similar. But the proteins have increased. That's a good rule of thumb. That's probably due to the database. But if we can talk about that if you want, so I don't know how we would. We could have a Zoom call or something, and we could all talk about it. All right. So about the same with this library. Let's look at another library that we made, and this was made by Timstorf Data. And you could see how, and let's see, is this the axis the same, sort of? And you could see how our home-built library has a much tighter IRT, and I explained IRT in a previous video, has a much tighter IRT prediction than something we get off the internet. And so that makes sense, right? Because this was done in my lab and my LC, so it's going to be more similar than something you get on the internet. All right, so let's look at this. Wow, peptides go up from 8,000 to 19,000, so almost double. Protein groups increase from, let's see, 1,695 to 2,700. So 2,700, you could see it's reporting around 5,000 proteins. But as I say, that's more of probably due to the database or the library we're using and the proteins in the library than anything else. Although when your protein groups do increase by a good 1,000, more than 1,000 proteins, that's almost doubled. So they almost doubled. So Spectronaut is reporting it quantified 3,000, almost 2,700 proteins in 3 minutes. That's pretty good. I would bet the coefficient of variation is probably a little more. And it is, not by much though. It looks pretty similar, the curves. Let's see. Coefficient of variation. Yeah, a little, I don't know, a little different. A little less. So I don't know if the coefficient of variation increased a little bit, which is what you'd expect. Probably. I would expect it. And of course we should be getting the same scans across the peak because it's the same data, just searched differently. So let's just confirm that. Data points per peak. Now I lost it. There it is. It's interesting. Let's see, data points per peak. It's interesting how that's different. Why is it different? I'll have to think about it. It is a little bit different, but look at the shape of this curve when you search it with a DIA library versus the direct DIA plus. It does look a little different. And why does it look different? I'll have to think about it. I have some ideas, but I'll have to think about it more. So anyway, that's the data for our 3-minute runs. 3-minute runs are pretty inexpensive. I mean, they're virtually free. So if you can run 300, if you have 300 samples, you can send me. We can run them all in a day. There is some overhead. The EvoSep tips cost around $3 a tip. But other than that, we can load up 300 samples in a day. Let's do it. Someone should send me 300 samples and we'll run them and we'll see what we get. So if anyone wants to look at this data, I'm going to upload everything here. This is our UC Davis Genome Center BioShare directory. This is how we give data back to people. You've probably seen it before. It will be on this link, so you can pause the video, write this down. I'm going to zip up everything and put it here so you guys could download it and play with it yourself if you're super bored. Okay, all right, thanks everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye.